and want to work on something before Jeff comes on and gives his presentation, jump over to Skillbit, tune me out, set an alarm, and come back when someone's got something really useful to say, and it's not just Josh Mason. We are so glad to have you all here. I know the stream I've been watching as more and more people have been joining us and participating in the chat. We appreciate you hearing. Sorry, chat distracted me. Thanks, Jeff. Maybe I'll just bring you on. We can riff on QR codes for a little bit before you start. But thank you all for being here. If you do have questions, bring them up in the chat. If you're ready, sir, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm tired. I was surprised I woke up early enough to catch Will's talk earlier.
Between you and me, I did not wake up in time to catch Pat's, but fortunately, it all worked out.
I have bad news, Josh. You just said that to all of the internet. That's not between you and me anymore.
I love Pat. He's a good friend. I know what he was going to talk about. Yeah. I had to take my brother to the airport at 5 this morning, and then I got back and was like, I'll take a little nap, and then a little nap ran over into, poor responsibility. But I let down my friends, but they covered for me because Rihanna and Claudia are awesome like that. Jeff, I liked what you had to say about QR codes. That it's the one of the fears of QR codes is that you don't know where it's going to take you. For me, though, I can't help but ask the question, why are you worried about the URL itself?
Yeah, I spent a long time learning URL analysis and like doing that manual process to get to the point where I could even like read percent encoding. I hate that. I can do that now, and I can just see it and be like, I know what that means. I feel so nerdy about that. But like, it doesn't even matter now. Like everything's obfuscated so hard, and there's like legitimately percent encoded scripts on websites. So you can't even tell what it's doing if you see the URL.
It's true. However, there aren't any known breaches or any active, not exercises, but like threat actors currently using QR codes known at all and having it work. I remember there was a time when QR codes were fresh where scammers went around and would like replace QR codes on like parking garages or parking lots to replace like Spotwise or one of the apps, taking you to their site where they'd get your credit card info because you put it in, and it was an issue for a little bit of time until the parking lots realized we'll just make an app. It'll take you to the store or into the app itself, and that's really hard to not mess up. Other than that, do you know of any scams that have come from or breaches, exploitation that comes from QR codes?
So my belief on this, and I'm going to say this carefully as somebody who holds a lot of CompTIA certifications, is that it's a really interesting thing to talk about now that came out 5 to 10 years ago. I think two of the things that always come back to me is that we have to remember that scammers have been doing this since before email. So like I read a Brian Krebs article years ago about how like the Nigerian prince scam was from sending letters to people. Like it was a physical thing before it was a digital thing. And then
decades, hundreds of years actually, in one form or another.
Was it Marcus Hitchens? I can never remember how to say his last name. But he said that actual attackers are doing the easy thing. Like they're not going out of their way to craft this super obtuse, or not obtuse, that's a triangle thing, super obscure like attack path where they get a QR code to your business so that when you try and pay your bill, you end up like, yeah, scammers will do that, but also like credit card skimmers are still a thing.
It's true. It's true.
I haven't seen any high-level QR-based attacks.
No one has.
I really
There's
wish I could. Like, I think back to like the earlier days of like when I was doing security research, I would buy random stuff on the internet that was clearly a scam, hoping they would send me like a USB or a DVD with malware on it.
so you could,
Because
yeah.
yeah, everyone would always say that's the thing. And I'm like, I'm gonna get it. That's how I'm gonna get my hands on some fresh malware. I'm gonna write up, this is what I'm gonna be known for. And then I'd just get like regular scammed.
Just normal email.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, I probably should have seen this coming. Attackers are persistent, but not always
Complicated.
novelly intelligent.
Yes. That's why it's like a whole job for like those researchers, for the John Hammonds and Marcus Hutchins of the world, to just
Yeah,
spend all day like, where is this malware? How do I get it? How do I mess with it?
I I used to think I really wanted to do that, and now I went back to the basics. That's kind of what I'll talk about later. Nah, not yet. But like, I know the DNS talk I did last year, some people were like, oh, DNS is so boring. How did you talk about this? And I'm like, I love this stuff. I love talking about this.
Yeah, but like DNS is everything.
Yeah.
Uh, I was just watching Ted Lasso, and for those who know, the soccer player from Mexico, and I can't remember why I'm not like remembering his name, but often says, "Football is life. DNS is life."
It really is.
When the internet's broken, it's DNS.
I can't remember who I was talking to, but like it's baked into everything. Like you don't even think about it working. Like even when you ping a name, it does DNS for you.
Yep.
Like I was telling somebody traceroute, and like I took the time to highlight, like, yeah, this wouldn't work without DNS. And they were like, ah, DNS here too again. I'm like, yes, it's everywhere. We can't get away from it.
I have some prepared words to talk about you, Jeff, so I'm gonna make you feel real awkward as I read them. Um, Jeff Krakenberg, as a technical trainer and security researcher, Jeff's goal is to spread awareness and knowledge. Daily experiences, including lecturing about cybersecurity, moderating open discussions about vulnerabilities, and building hacking labs. Like many others, Jeff often delves too deep into the weeds of the internet. Um, Jeff, I know you've got a great presentation for folks. Um, I'll just share this live. You won't be able to apparently uh, move the slides yourself, so I will be your slide clicker. Either if I notice you stopped talking or you say slide, I'll know it's time to move slides along. But with no further ado, I'm gonna move my face out of here and give you the floor, sir.
Awesome. Oh man. Yeah. Now I'm just thinking about AI and aliens and DNS and all of that. There's going to be a movie about that at one point, I bet. But hey, welcome everybody. As Josh said, my name is Jeff Krakenberg. I'm going to be talking about Pokemon today because I am a giant nerd and it has consumed my life once again. It did it again. But I figured I would pull in some AI, talk about that in a bit, and how we can kind of think about this. First slide, though, if you guys are interested in following me at all, those are the two handles that I use on the internet: abandoned free Wi-Fi, and then just a shortened version of my last name, Jeff Kraken. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, anywhere you find me. If I'm on the internet, I can't really control that. So anyway, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Right. Oh. All right. So a little bit of the basics. Full disclosure, I picked this font because I thought it looked cool, and now it's bothering me. So if it bothers anybody else, know I'm here in the struggle with you. But as Josh said, who am I? My name is Jeff Krakenberg. I am a trainer, security researcher, formerly a cybersecurity analyst, penetration tester, vulnerability assessment, desktop support, construction salesman, construction Windows installer. I've been all over all of the jobs: bartender, barista. But lately, as we were kind of chatting about, a lot of what I do is look at the basics. I look at the things that people often overlook, figure out how to restructure, approach it from a security mindset or even a business mindset sometimes, to make sure that we're not missing something. And in this case, Why are we talking about this? One, I love Pokemon. It's a game that I have grown up on. I can never get away from it. Every few years, they release a new one and pull me back in fully. My only saving grace this time is that I don't have Switch 2 money right now, so I'm not completely lost into Pokopia. Pokopia? Poco Utopia? I can never remember what that one's supposed to be called either. But we're going to be talking about this from kind of the AI aspect as well. So I called it the local agent Duel League. We'll get into what I mean by that later. But it was just a look at some of the infrastructure for what people were trying to do to secure their agents and not be very successful about it, or kind of shoot themselves in the foot as an analogy when they're working with that. And for that last question, this is not going to be pro or anti AI. As best as I can, I'm just talking about some of the struggles. But to just do a level set on how I feel about this, I'm still displeased about the industry as a whole when it comes to AI. But I love the equalizer that it can be for certain roles and folks. So if you guys have any questions about what I mean by that, always feel free to throw them out later or write them down and reach out, however you want to approach that. More than happy to talk about my feelings on AI a different time. But for this, I'm going to focus more on the practicality of what I ran into. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right. In this case, my idea was, it was kind of silly. It was just, what if we pitted a bunch of AI agents against each other, right? So if anybody caught it earlier in the year, for like the 7 of you that watched the videos, there was, I was doing a bunch of Docker containerization videos and like crash course videos on that when I had free time to make YouTube videos again. And a lot of what I ran into was getting containers to work together to support applications, right? I didn't really have a whole lot of experience in the past going into that. I had focused on other platforms before. And as I started to get deeper and deeper into those connections in Docker, I was like, hey, what if we tied together Docker with Pokemon? Because this started right around the time that the Pokemon Red re-release came out. And so I wanted to build something that had just a bunch of localized, containerized agents all working from the same save state. So there's a lot of emulation involved. That was the idea. I wouldn't be talking about this if it worked out well or followed that idea perfectly. But let's go to the next slide so I can talk about that. And, oh, yeah, there we go. I got lost for a second. So before I get into that properly, there were some projects that I very heavily drew on to get into my own work on this. So I've got these here if you guys are interested in like successful AI projects where people did the thing I was trying to do a little bit better. Mine was performed with love, right? I did this because it was something I cared about. Specifically, I loved Pokemon Red and Fire Red. And then when they re-released Fire Red more recently, dived back into it. But one of the coolest projects I found was a headless Pokemon agent. So it works really well tying together agentic stuff with emulated Pokemon games. And Nuel's research, I'm just going to butcher the name on that. Nuel's research, headless Pokemon agent, I would recommend looking into it. If you're interested in like overworld agentic Pokemon, what really helped me from them is that it showed me that I don't want to deal with that, right? It was a lot. I didn't just want to pick up somebody else's project and then start working on my own from that. I wanted to have something that I could understand from the beginning, and they did a lot of great work to get that. So I went back to my basics when it comes to games and emulating and game hacking, and I just went straight to memory injection instead of bothering with all of that. But that is a good project to look into. Heavily recommend it. Then the next one, I recently came across a publication called Paged Out. So I'll take a second to talk about them because I haven't seen a whole lot of other people talking about them. They're from across the water for me in the US. But in their issue 8, I guess I can say a little bit about what I know about them. They're like a 1-page per article zine. So like there are short technical or fun things from various contributors put into a zine and published. I saw on issue 8, page 9, there was something called Agent Rome. And what Agent Rome was, it was again, another overworld project, but focused on, I believe the game was Watch Dogs 2, or maybe it was Watch Dogs Legion. I can never remember which Watch Dogs is which. But it was getting the agent to be able to take a picture, so actually interact with the XYZ axes and take an action based on requirements. So that is a really neat project that I saw that kind of lined up again with my lack of desire to do overworld stuff with my project. But then the last one down at the bottom was Peter Wooden's Pokemon Red experiments. Highly recommend looking into that because it showed what models could do with reinforcement. And that is a big issue that I run into, especially when I was doing chatbot testing back at the influx of that over the last couple of years. Taking the data that failed and then making a good choice based on it. RL, reinforced learning, is that. And I liked how Peter tied that into Pokemon because it's so much easier to learn through games for me. So those are three of my big things that I would consider support or what guided me in my project that I would highly recommend you guys check out if you like any of what I talk about today. But let's talk about Pokemon more and go to the next slide. All right, so these were my starters. This was my team that I used for the save state. I'll get into why in a bit, but I'll leave it here for a second for anyone that's... I've seen a couple comments come in talking about Pokemon. So I'll leave it for a second just to see if anybody can identify all of them. I hope so, because I'm just sticking with the old ones for this one, but also give just a little bit of time for people to think about what they could be. Boba. Oh, Devin, I just saw your comment about the phishing campaign. Comprehensive business email and hoster.url. What? I love that. Well, no, from a simulated attacker standpoint, I love that. That is really neat and interesting. I'm not going to talk about how much I hate SharePoint and how companies don't manage it, because that's not the tangent I want to go down today. But I am going to take that nugget from your comment and I am going to deep dive into how I can learn more about that. So thank you for sharing, Devin. All right, that was probably enough time for the people watching. And then we'll go ahead and go to the next slide and show off those starters. So I just had Pikachu, Rattata. I have a stutter, sorry. Rattata, Caterpie, Bulbasaur, Weedle, and Pidgey. Those were the save states that I started with. And let's go to the next slide so I can talk about why those ones specifically. We ran into a couple of problems. Specifically, without a lot of guardrails, AI is actually really bad at open world games. If you guys look into the projects that I shared earlier with news research and then Peter Wooden's reinforced learning, you can see how people get around that. But specifically with Pokemon games, if you guys haven't played them in a while, there are a lot of scene changes and transitions where without those guardrails set up and those instructions for your agents working properly, they will try and jump ahead and then get lost and confused. And we're not going to address the typo in the second one. I know how to spell litmus test, I promise. But for me, with those constraints on the AI aspect of it and then the Pokemon aspects of it, I broke this so many times. I had fully working code at one point, and then I was like, oh, I want to implement this other thing. And like every project we've all worked on, me wanting to implement that one little thing broke the rest of everything, had to rebuild, start over. So that is some of the problems that came up because of this. Yeah, really, I've seen other people do it really well, right? So agentic AI, even local, especially local, I would say, can solve this problem if you see it as a problem that you want to address. But I'll get into the infrastructure in it in a bit. So I took the idea that I had ran into a bunch of problems, and then I went back to that idea and I revised it. So let's go to the next slide so I can talk about that revised idea. I still wanted to have them fight each other. I don't know why, it just felt so perfect in my brain to have local AI agents fighting each other in Pokemon while I just kind of watch and laugh at the stupid mistakes they make. Because unlike this AI, I've been playing Pokemon too many hours, and they just have the massive stolen internet to work off of. So the revised idea that I had was I would have 4 agents, and I'll talk you guys through specifically the 4 agents that I used on this. And then 4 scripted bots. So anybody from game hacking or game scripting, if you've ever worked with any of that, these are going to be more traditional bots. So full disclosure, my first experience bots was RuneScape back in the day. Anybody else ever? Because that's kind of what we did here. But since it was locally, I couldn't get blocked by the mods. Anyway, so it was 4 agents, 4 scripted traditional bots, all running locally in Docker using an early game save state. So that is why you saw the starters that you did or the team that you did. I might late game run Rattata, Caterpie, and Weedle, probably not. Very unlikely that I would use those in a final team. But with it being so much problems on the getting it set up side, because I'm not a programmer, so I very heavily leaned on research for everything that I was doing. I just took it back to the basics on the game side, right? So at the beginning of the game, if you haven't thought about first couple encounters in Pokemon that you'll have, it's very simple moves. It's very simple game logic. There's not a lot you have to track. So you get a little bit of type matching, you get a little bit of continuous damage, a little bit of buff, a little bit of debuff, but the damage types themselves are kept relatively plain between like normal, physical, some poison, some whatever Pidgey does. So that was why I revised the idea to get it down to a little bit less fluff on the Pokemon side, so I could focus more on the scripting and bot side. Yeah, definitely. If you guys have questions as I'm going through this, I'm just going to tangent into the things that I think are cool. So if you guys have anything on your end you'd like me to tangent onto in this talk, I can also do that. Because I have the ADHD real bad. And if I'm left alone with my thoughts, we're going to go all over the place as we get through this. Anyway, so that is the revised idea. 4 agents, not 16. I was a little bit too ambitious with that. 4 scripted bots, so there is still a difference in infrastructure or architecture, whatever you want to think about it. A local, all running locally, all containerized with Docker, and an early game save that we're basing this off of. So let's go to the next slide to get into that. Talking about the infrastructure that actually worked, Docker was key for me. I probably could have done this without Docker a lot easier. And if you guys are interested in recreating something like this, don't use Docker unless you have to. I was using Docker because that was my focus for this project, and then everything built upward from there. I did end up using Ollama installed locally for the AI agents. Just made it really easy to pull what I needed and then use the OpenAI compatible APIs so that when I wrote everything in Python, it made sense. I didn't have to reinvent the wheel on the AI agent side, because I did have to reinvent some wheels on some other aspects. But Docker, Ollama, Python, that was really all I used on this. If you are familiar with Python, you might know that I was dumb for doing that. I should have pulled in other languages to let them do what they do best and then just kind of hook it all together in what I did in Python. But there was so much coffee. I am in my basement office right now, and right outside the door to my right that you guys can't see, I have an espresso machine that my partner got for me. And that thing put in some work when I was doing this project to keep me going. But to get a little bit deeper into the infrastructure, we'll go to the next slide. All right. And so I had to find a way to keep everything separate so that when I was writing my Python, I knew the paths, right? I knew where my agents were. I knew where my scripted bots were. I knew where my states were because I needed to pull those frequently to make sure everything was working. And then I had multiple Python application apps, little baby applets written in Python to get each container working properly. So then I had a Docker file for the agents, a Docker file for the bots, and a Docker compose that pulled whatever was needed. So those were the high level of the Docker infrastructure, to speak on that for a second, because this is what really brings up issues for folks that try and containerize and run AI locally without thinking about the grander scope of their project, is that my compose had a lot of hefty logic in it. So just starting up and running the containers, I would say probably ran a couple hundred lines of code 10 times, right? So for the agents that got spun up when they were needed, for the bots that got spun up when they were needed, for the web view to get spun up so that I could see what was happening outside of just my debug information, all of that had to be fine-tuned ahead of time. And the frustrating part for me was, I'll share this with you guys at this point, sometimes AI agents locally, when you don't give them enough stuff to work on, they just don't know what to do. So inside of my agents directory, not only did I have the basic instructions, I ended up having to give them an overview of the team that they had. I had to give them an overview of each member of that team, what moves they had, what those moves were doing. Because unlike me playing Pokemon, or some of y'all playing Pokemon, the AI agent wasn't just aware of all of our experience, right? If I get pulled into a Poke battle and I've got Caterpie and it's a wild Pidgey, I am going to change my Pokemon because that Pidgey is going to attack like that one eagle that stole someone's Chihuahua to my Caterpie, and my Pokemon's just going to be gone. The agent didn't know that, right? When you restrict an agent's information, you are restricting its ability to do its job. So I'm not saying leave your agents wild. Please, for the love of everything that is cyber related, don't do that. But you are accepting some additional handicaps when you pull your AI inside and containerize it and keep it fully local without any calls, because that's what I did on this one. And it did still work. I won't say that it broke completely, but I had to kind of provide the internal knowledge, or the assumed knowledge, what do people like to call it in the field, the tribal knowledge of Pokemon that I had for that team that I constructed with the agents, right? And there are a couple of talks I've heard recently at conferences about that tribal knowledge and agentic AI and how you can use it to overcome that tribal knowledge. But you also need to remember that the agents themselves are going to suffer from that lack of tribal knowledge, or institutional knowledge, if you're a bigger fan of that term, the knowledge of how a business actually does things, as opposed to how I could do something or how I did something in the field one time when I thought it was really cool. Knowing how the business actually operates is just as important for an agent as it is for an overworked, underpaid intern. So that is the agent side of it. When it came to the infrastructure that worked, I had to give them the information. Right? It seems weird to think about, because when I was building this, I was like, I know what these Pokemon do. Everybody else knows what these Pokemon do. Surely these microscopic, localized, containerized AI agents will have a full understanding of the breadth of the Pokemon universe. Turns out they don't. But then after that, I got into the scripted bots. These were all written out long form, right? So I'll talk about the bots explicitly later, but for projects like this, for any type of game hacking or game scripting, I had to work with the bots and kind of get them to a refined state so that they worked. Not like the AI agent, that worked but didn't work for me out of the beginning. The bots I had to get to a working state. I bit off way more than I wanted to chew in this project is what you guys can take home from this, if nothing else. So just for the AI agents, I had to start with a bunch of stuff and then prune it down and then add in my own knowledge that I needed it to have to make the right decision. And then from the bots, I had to start from zero. I had to line out what I wanted the bot to do and then get it to be able to do that. It's almost approaching the same problem from two different aspects, if that resonates with anybody currently trying to make the decision of AI versus internally developed. For the ROMs, this is mostly my disclaimer so that anybody watching this on the internet doesn't get mad at me and then I get in trouble with somebody that I can't afford to pay back. But all ROMs should be gathered legally, right? If you guys don't know how to do a dump for a ROM, it is really easy to find ROMs on the internet. But on this one, I did my best to actually pull my own ROM, not something I'd done before. And the reason why, full disclosure, I couldn't find a ROM that I could get to work. I was fully willing to break that little rule there. I was just too stupid to get it to break, right? So I actually ended up doing the legal thing because I couldn't figure out how to do the illegal thing. But the ROM is really important because based on which ROM you're working with, you might have to change some of the memory side. Right. So when you guys are, if you're thinking of rebuilding this, go from a known good, create your own dump, right? Don't trust just something you found on the internet. I had a couple of projects that I did where it was just a regular Pokemon emulator that I was using a fresh ROM pulled from a site that I thought was trusted. And the site was trusted. That sounded bad. But what actually happened was the ROM was different than the ROM I was expecting. So some of the translation between got a little bit lost. I won't go down that rabbit hole too much. The last one I'll have on here that I want to talk about is the web view. Highly recommend if you were doing any type of, whether it is scripted, automated, agentic, straight up chatbot-based LLM actions, that you have some way to monitor and oversee outside of just your debugging information. When I was just doing console, and then I eventually switched up to using Jupyter Labs so that I could run it step by step, I lost a lot of the insight that would have made this a lot easier, right? So monitoring is key when it comes to projects like this, because there was a point where the battle was between two agents, and those agents were waiting for the other one to take an action. And I was looking at my debug and I was like, everything looks fine. Everything looks good. I was looking at the monitoring I had through Jupyter to see like memory and runtime and all of that. Everything was just stalling out, right? I wasn't getting anything back because I couldn't see. But later when I had the web view hooked up, I could see that they weren't sending actions, right? So both agents had just a timer that they were like, okay, is it my turn? Is it my turn? Is it my turn? And it turned into what I'll call later the Midwest nice aspect of it. But yeah, that's a bit about the infrastructure side of it. Hopefully you guys are able to glean some insight to your agentic and AI struggles from what I talked about there. But we'll go to the next slide and talk about the agents specifically. So the 4 agents that I got on here were, if you guys are wondering where these graphics came from, this is just me being very tired playing around in Canva, because I thought I wanted to have a break from the usual really nice polished presentations that you guys are going to see, because that's not me at all, if you guys can't tell from everything about me. So I went with this retro and then just overlaid and color washed to create some stuff as we were going. But the agents that I worked with, 2 of the ones that I highly recommend testing out if you are working in localized AI or containerized localized AI. From Olama, pull small LM, I can't say that. Small LM2. It is just a really small guy, just a little guy that can do some actions for you. and then Tiny Llama. Those are, I would say, the two that came at the forefront for me because of how well used they are, right? I didn't want to have a lot of untested or frontier kind of stuff where like I didn't know what was going to happen. I had to like troubleshoot the model. I just wanted to pick something and then be able to trust it. So Small LM2 and Tiny Llama were my first two choices. From there, I made a tiny context. So I took Tiny Llama and similar to a Docker file, Ollama lets you make, I believe they just call it a model file that lets you set additional parameters to take a publicly available model like Tiny Llama, apply your own parameters to it to create your own model. So in my case, I took Tiny Llama and made it into Tiny CPX for tiny context. Essentially restricted it so much it almost didn't even work. Cut it down to 2048 on the context. If anybody's aware of context windows and what those normally look like, it was funny for me. And the funnies are fully why I picked the last one, Decidui. I found this scrolling around. We'll go to the next slide so I can talk about Decidui specifically. Because there's somebody made it. I think I was the fifth download for this. But in Ollama, there was a Decidui. Decidui. I think I'm saying that. I'm saying it how I'm gonna say it, and if that's wrong, please let me know, or don't, because I think it's fun. Decidui is a Pokemon. If you guys aren't familiar, comes from the later years, so that might be why you missed it. And this is a model that you can pull down through Ollama. So its instruction set is based off of one of the other ones, but all it says is you are a Decidui, a grass ghost type Pokemon. You are not a god, and you're a, oh, their grammar. You are not a god, and you're a Pokemon. You're a grass ghost type Pokemon. You look like a shiny form with a white body, red specks on your wings, and light blue feathers on your head and tail. Answer as a Decidui only. Full disclosure, why I picked this one for the agent is I wanted to see if it would keep trying to take action as Decidui instead of using the team available to it, right? I wanted to see that collision between instructions. What comes from the model, what comes from the user, what comes from the architecture, and see kind of what won out in the end. And in my case, because of how I had it restricted, Decidui did not try and switch to Decidui as much as I thought it would. But that goes back to the tribal knowledge that I talked about earlier. I gave the information of what is available and then wanted them to pick just from those so that I could pass it to Python accurately. But yeah, Decidui is out there. If you guys want to play with a really funny one, I had some fun talking to Decidui. Outside of this project, it was very silly to have an AI agent that thought it was a Pokemon and could only take actions as a Pokemon. Their instructions, if you guys are reading through that, and that description could be a little bit stricter, in my opinion. But hey, they made it, and so kudos to KeroCNX3 on that. We'll go to the next slide, and I'll start talking about the scripted bots. If anybody's worked with, I feel like I've said that a couple of times. Hopefully at least somebody in here has worked with a bit of game scripting or game hacking. But when we're thinking of traditional game bots, some of the big ones are going to be mash A, especially in older games, just hitting that primary entry key. And in Pokemon, that would be your A to select your A. Yeah, Game Genie, that's what's up. Your A to select your A to select an action, to open a door. A is going to be your primary button in a lot of Pokemon games, at least the older ones. Now there's a lot of other things you got to keep in mind, like movement. So Mash A was definitely the first one, because that was one that I had experience with from somebody else developing and using it in Pokemon to kind of like run through battles quickly to get to the parts that I wanted to do. So you'd use like a time speed times 20 and then mash A, and you could just run through, get to the end game, and then build your team. Now we just can jump there, which is crazy to think about. We just jump to the end game with some of the more modern game hacking. But this isn't a game hacking talk, Jeff. Don't get too distracted by how cool the work other people do is. Anyway, MASH-A was my first one. And then I wanted to have a type matchup, and I was really worried about this bot because in theory should work great. But what actually ended up happening with this guy and why he didn't win is, what if the other person also always changes their Pokemon? So let's say I mentioned the Caterpie versus Pidgey setup earlier. What if I saw that they had a Pidgey and I'm on a Caterpie and I want a better type matchup? So I'm going to switch to my, I don't know, like Pikachu. And then they'll be on their Pidgey. But now I've switched to my Pikachu, they're on their Pidgey. What if they switch to a ground type? And now I'm going to switch because they switched, they're going to switch because I switched, and it's just going to keep being this like loop of chasing each other. So I did add some logic on this end to kind of troubleshoot that by just forcing a move after a couple of changes. You can only change Pokemon, I think I said 3 times before you have to select a move regardless of typeset. No. Hopefully you guys didn't lose me for too long there. But I lost me for a second. Cool. It's always scary when the internet does internet things. So type matchup, that is going to be, again, focus more on like which Pokemon would be the best against the other one. For this script, I gave it similar information that I gave the agents, right? I let it know which Pokemon was good against what type, and of the opposite team, which Pokemon had what type, because they were all working from the same state. So that was type matchup. Next up was random selection, because you got to have a randomizer, right? Very obviously did not do great in this specific setup, but it had a good distribution of moves and attacks. And then the final scripted bot that I threw in there was a copy bot. Whatever the other person did, I would do that, right? So if they change Pokemon, I change Pokemon. If they did attack 1, I do attack 1. And it was essentially just a mimic. Not like a D&D mimic that pretends to be a treasure chest and then eats your greedy hand when you reach in to get the treasure, but like a folklore mimic, which would like copy actions to try and fit in. Though folklore mimics are also kind of like D&D mimics, because D&D mimics are based on folklore mimics. And anyway, we're going off on a tangent again. So MASH-A for your traditional type matchup for hopefully a better look at winning. Random selection for a randomizer, and copybot just to do what other people do. So those were our scripted bots in this setup. To talk about some of the results, we'll go to the next slide. And this really highlights the issue that I talked about earlier when I said that containerizing, localizing, and restricting your agents is going to create problems. If that's the route you are going, be aware of those problems. Right? It's kind of like old school cybersecurity discussions about confidentiality versus availability. The more secure you make a system, the more secure you make a system, the less available it's going to be. The more available you make a system, the more we have to do to secure it. Right? So same thing with restricting your agent's knowledge and their resources. Just running to get the agent to select, attack, move 4, to then give that to Python took a ton of resources, right? At the end of the day, I think I broke this down to, on my lab computer, each container only got, I want to say 4 gigs of memory. And I don't remember the CPU weight, if I'm being honest. But I did restrict the resources they had access to, as well as the information they had access to. And that was something that I had to deal with in this project. Right? Just like in the field, you don't want your agents to be able to have full run just because they thought they had a good idea. I think we've all seen how that can go pretty poorly lately with token burn, and then also with deleting systems they shouldn't have even had access to. So the more access you give your AI agents, the more damage they can do. The least access, the less access you give your agents, the more you're going to have to help them along. Right? It's just a similar discussion to something we talked about previously in the industry. And then one of the main results that I kept running into was that Midwest nice. This affected Decidui, Small LLM, and Tiny Llama. It didn't affect Tiny Context because it couldn't remember. It just kept trying to take actions, right? But the agents that were well equipped to solve the problem ended up using resources to make sure it was their turn to solve the problem, which when you had two agents both using resources to make sure it was their turn to solve the problem, we got stuck in a loop. And to talk about that, we'll go to the next slide. And this is more on the battle side. I couldn't get a good clip, but I pulled out some of the code to talk about what I was working on. So if you guys aren't familiar with Jupyter Labs or Jupyter Notebook, whichever one you started using is probably what you'll call it. I had to restrict the actions, cut it down to step by step so that I could see the runtime, see what it's doing. And when I was working with Decidui as an example, it took, in some cases, 151 or 134 seconds just to take action. So I don't know if you guys have played Pokemon in a while, but that is a long time to decide if you want to use Tackle. Because if you think back to our starters, we had Pikachu, another guy. No, we had Pikachu, Rattata, Caterpie, Bulba, Weedle, and Pidgey. And their moves are very basic. There wasn't a lot of logic that we needed, but it still took the time to get there. And in the AI versus AI, that was 12 minutes for a battle is what I saw. Right? AI versus bot was 8 minutes, and bot versus bot average was 3 minutes. That was the timings. For the results, I would say the time was well spent on the AI versus bot. Our bots ended up losing, except for Mash A, most of their battles. Whereas the AI, with its constrained environment, was still able to make a good decision. I think I forgot to put the final scoreboard on here. Dang, I'll share that with you guys though. So timing was really key, being patient, seeing the output, and understanding what it meant. We'll go to the next slide for a little bit of talking about the results as a whole. And this is the one where I meant to have a little scoreboard, but I'll just tell you guys anyway. The results, AI is good at some stuff and bad at others. If we haven't figured that out by now, I hope I'm not leading the groundbreaking discussion on that because I am far too tired and lazy and I want to go play Pokemon again. But it did have good calls sometimes. It took time, took resources to get there, took a little restructuring. It came back to, honestly, me doing the work to put it into a good place so that it could make a good decision. And that was going to be from the data side, right? I talked a lot about institutional and tribal knowledge as I was going through this, right? How I had to work with the AI so that it would understand what I thought about the Pokemon universe and what this team represented in that universe, what moves they had, all of that stuff. Kind of like how, I don't know, in the field, when you bring in a new person, you have to show them how your team interacts with other teams, what tools you have available in your team. Whether it's a human or a bot, you still have to instill or give access to that institutional knowledge, which means you have to verify that knowledge. I don't know if you guys remember, I think it was 2 years ago now, Microsoft announced that Copilot would have access to everyone's SharePoints, and then everybody panicked. And everybody was like, oh no, that's internal stuff, oh no. But there were steps on securing it. You just had to go through the steps and make sure that you weren't exposing stuff where you shouldn't be exposing stuff. Big shocker. People are bad at managing SharePoint. Is that a hot take for anyone? I don't know. But we had to verify the data, and then we had to monitor. Like I mentioned earlier, there were a couple of issues where if I had more visibility, I could have troubleshot it quicker. Specifically, Decidui kept changing Pokemon. That was mostly what that model wanted to do, is to change Pokemon. And I think that's because it kept wanting to change to itself, right? It was wondering why it wasn't involved in this. It's a Pokemon after all. Has there been an instance of a Pokemon being a Pokemon trainer? So it's like kind of just ratatouilleing other Pokemon through the battle. I don't know. But Decidueye kept changing its Pokemon, and Mash A kept doing little attacks each turn. My final scoreboard was that Mash A won the most battles because of those tiny hits. But I also hampered it really hard because I didn't think ahead. My team, as I lined it up, was Pikachu, Rattata, the rat, Caterpie, that's going to be our problem, and then Bulbasaur, Weedle, and Pidgey. I thought that was a clean distribution of early game abilities and moves, but what I forgot was, which you guys might have thought of already with Mash A, is that Caterpie's default move 1 is String Shot, and String Shot doesn't do damage. So if anybody was able to get Mash A to its third Pokemon, they won the battle. Yeah, Rat-ta-ta. Good old Rat-ta-ta. That sounds worse somehow. So yeah, Mash A could have won. It probably would have won all battles. That's an old 100%. Button mashing is always a technique. I remember when I first learned how to play Super Smash Brothers. I was on a couch with a bunch of my brother's friends, and they were getting frustrated because I was just mashing the buttons and I was winning, and they were trying to have like strategy and stuff. But I was winning because I was just clicking faster and doing stupid attacks. And they got frustrated and then ended up losing because of that. It's a legitimate strategy as long as you're set up to win. If you're mashing A and all A is doing is String Shot, you are going to die. So on the agent side, for hopefully to a shock of nobody, Tiny Context, the one that I restricted the context window, did the worst. It couldn't keep track of what it was working on, who it was up against. It just kept taking a fresh shot at everything. The one that did the best would have been, honestly, Small LLM2, because it's tried and true, just selected the right thing. Yeah, and so that's a little bit about what I learned from this. We'll go ahead and go on to the next and get close to the last slides. Next up for me, full disclosure, I don't want to touch this ever again. I don't plan on maintaining or updating this. This was fun for a bit, and I learned, I got a refresh on game hacking and memory injection. I got a little bit of insight into how AI can be used alongside that, localized-wise, but it was more frustrating than it was worth. I'm just going to go back to playing Pokemon Fire Red. I'll put my slides and stuff up into GitHub and make it available. So if anybody wants to see the project, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. But we'll go to the final slide. And thank you guys for your time. Thank you guys for letting me talk about Pokemon and stuff and attending CyberLabCon. If you guys haven't heard what they've been talking about lately, there's a charity aspect to this that I really am jazzed about because I love seeing people give back. If you're interested in following me, again, my tags are Abandoned Free Wi-Fi or Jeff Kraken. And I just like how the mouse cursor is clicking on Pikachu on the final slide. That's my last bit I have for you guys. Thanks.
Jeff, thank you for joining us. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Josh, it does sound like you're at the end of a hallway yelling at us, if that helps.
There we go.
Okay, I can hear you more now.
Every freaking time. I actually had to switch headsets because the other one is charging. So, yeah, when it reconnected, it went with the wired mic, which is just overpowering for what we're doing. Yeah, Pokemon, video games, scripting, and AI. Quite a combo. You got me some ideas of some LLM scripting for some of the games I play, just to see how they might go.
Yeah, I will say definitely check out Agent Rome. That one was neat to see because it's a third person game, right? It's a AAA game, and they were able to get like the camera interaction to work. So yeah.
Interesting. There's an open source game called Endless Sky where you fly spaceships around. Um, yeah, everything. It's completely open source, and it runs on C, I think. So it's yeah, you don't even need. You can just go to the GitHub and download it and go nuts. So if if you did want to touch this again,
Josh, it's really quiet, so I'm chiming in.
Oh, I could hear him, so I figured everybody else could.
No, he sounds like he went to a
I'll use this
dungeon.
one.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's okay. I'm not judging, but I am. And
It's fine. You're just terrible, Josh. It's okay, but you're doing a bad job. But it's okay, but do better. But it's
And-
okay.
I'm cool
like,
with
so Josh messaged me. He
negative
goes, "Hey,
feedback.
I need a BRB for 10 minutes. Can you like do the slides?" And I'm all like, "Fine, I will do your job today again." And here I am doing the job again today. So
So you guys should really donate for charity, and then also so that Josh feels good about his time here because we are making fun of him.
Yep. So for
If-
$5, you can definitely donate to Next Gen Cyber Ed to help support cyber education in public schools. Otherwise, they might end up like Josh and have terrible audio. So really make sure that you donate. We are still waiting for 100 donors, which is awesome because then we go in and boom. You will receive a copy of Backdoor and Breaches. It's a super fun game. Josh can't say how awesome it is because of his audio. So, you know what? I feel like
Wow.
for every single time I can do a mic drop and a burn, someone should donate. I need a little chime.
He,
like that.
Josh can't do a mic drop. He already dropped his mic.
Yes.
Those are good.
I feel
Oh, look,
bad.
it sounds better now.
No, Sierra, they're not strays. We are aiming fully at Josh. This is not
Yeah.
Josh catching strays. These are
No,
directed
this is
attacks.
what we do. This is how you know you have friendship.
See, he's trying
Yeah.
to defend himself, but he can't
when you're
say it.
scheming.
I also think it's funny because now we can hear him, and we're still just acting like we can't.
It's fine. This is how our relationship goes. So-
See, he's trying to make it sound like we're
Yeah.
friends
Did
right
you
now.
say something, Josh? I couldn't.
All right, Jeff, thank you for joining us. This has been great. Thank you all for tuning in. Jeff, what is your favorite Pokemon?
Full disclosure, it's Eevee. I'm just a fan of big old regular Eevee. I hated the concept that Eevee had to be something else originally.
Ooh.
And I will get this is my Jolteon. I got caught on an Instagram ad and I bought all of the sleeping Pokemon. And now they're just evenly distributed around my house. So I love all the evolutions, but Eevee is actually my favorite Pokemon. As useless as that
Nice.
cute little fox is.
Oh, not completely useless.
He,
Other things
yeah.
are just OP, and yeah, evolution makes other things OP. Unfortunately, yeah, I wish Eevee, had a version of just you can make them amazing.
Yeah, I think it was Let's Go Eevee, the one that was like Eevee's your companion. Eevee still kind of sucks. And it's like, he's cute. I love him. He's very cozy as a Pokemon.
I mean, the whole premise of the game is you must evolve to be improved. You can level up, but unless you evolve, or you're Snorlax.
I always felt sad for the Pokemon that didn't originally have an evolution. Because it was like,
Yeah.
no, it's just him. Everybody else you can catch and make super cool. But for some of them, it's just what you get.
Well, and then like Pikachu. Pikachu's great, but frankly, until like Raichu is so powerful, but everyone just wants, from the show, Pikachu, or at least, we all love Pikachu. There's nothing wrong with Raichu.
I think my hate of Raichu comes from the show where it originally was like Pikachu is good and doesn't have to be Raichu. Like that was the whole I remember that episode where it was like
Mm-hmm.
You're back.
Okay, where it was like, do you want to evolve your Pikachu because that's how you could win this battle, or do you trust your